Awesome.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to 100 Degrees of Entrepreneurship. I am super excited to be here with a new-ish friend of mine, Dana Snyder. Dana, welcome.
Hey, good to be here too.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah. So I cannot believe this, but I'm entering my 5th year of owning Positive Equation. I
Amazing.
focus,
Congrats.
thank you. I focus on really doing a lot of research and teaching and providing, particularly nonprofits, with the most innovative and up to date social media, digital marketing tools, platforms, strategies, all encompassing the digital marketing space so that they can really grow and amplify their online voice and raise more funds. And if you would have told me 5 years ago that I would still be doing this, I probably would have questioned myself. I think it's been such an adventure for those entrepreneurs listening. I think year 1 and year 2 can be super trying. But it's really exciting to be sitting here talking to you in year 5.
Yay. Congrats on year 5. That's amazing. Isn't there some stat that's like most small businesses don't make it past like a certain number of years? And I think 5 is like you've definitely crossed that threshold. So you're good. Did you always were you always in marketing, always in digital marketing? Is this what you thought like has this kind of always been your career path or your dream?
So what's funny is I graduated from college. This will be like adding my age to things. I graduated from college in 2010. So at that time, social media and the digital space was nothing like what it is now. I mean, if you look back, YouTube was just a couple years old. Instagram was super old school. Nothing in social was really utilized for a business purpose until a few years later. So like when I was graduating and going through my degree from UCF, I sent faxes, like, which sounds so silly, but like I was a ad PR grad. So I literally was learning how to fax a press release. So as soon as I entered employment and digital was like coming of age, like I was coming of age as it was happening. So I've always loved social media from the standpoint that you as an individual can have a voice and have the ability to create a movement and change, regardless of if you're a multi-million-dollar organization or not, right? So I've always had this interest, but it slowly has evolved as honestly the space itself has. So yeah, my first job was at a nonprofit, doing marketing and development and all the things as it normally does. And then I moved to New York City and lived the agency life for about 5 years, working in digital and web development. And I loved it. And then decided that I really wanted to take what I had learned and go back to the nonprofit sector because my mind was just blown out of all the creativity and experiences that we were creating at the agencies. And I was like, there's no reason why I can't just take all of this and use it for good. So that essentially is what created Positive Equation 5 years ago.
I love that. Do you feel like I feel like the nonprofit space it has a little bit of a reputation for being kind of old school, sometimes like resistant to change and things like that. And then we have this digital marketing, which is like this ever evolving beast, and there's new things all the time, and it's dominated by like younger people in general. Do you feel in the work that you do like there's any kind of pushback or resistance to some of these newer things and this creative stuff that you worked on in the agencies in New York City?
Yeah, what's really interesting, especially, I mean, look what we just lived through / are living through right now, where everything was digital. I mean, I've been using Zoom for meetings since I started and working remotely for 5 years. So those things weren't a new concept. And I was a digital producer on American Idol. So we were live streaming all the time. Like a lot of the things that I had been doing became new to the nonprofit space. I mean, the idea of a virtual event seemed bananas to people, right? Like, how is this going to work? Fundraising through social media and through creating a campaign page. Like, what is that? Doing social ads, like all of that was very new. but I think it's like transition now to being the norm, and also just understanding consumer behavior. So we as a society, when the nonprofits look at, okay, where is my audience? There's 2 billion people on social, right? So if you say my audience isn't there, that's not true. My mom is going to be 70 and she's all over Facebook.
Right. Right.
So it's like the question that I ask all the time is, do you make a purchase on Amazon? If the answer is yes, then your donor is likely on social media or a digital platform, or going to donate to you online. So there's been some like risk adverse mindset nature, especially when it comes to, specifically in your world, finance, like moving some of that budget to go towards digital resources. That can be more difficult, but then that's where everyone is shifting to. So it's like, I think now it's not, when do we have to do this? It's how do we do it in the best way possible?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I am like, the fact that you brought up the budget makes me think like, I feel like a lot of people think, well, social media is free, right? Like Instagram, you can just set up a free account on Instagram. Facebook is free, but you kind of do need a budget. So what goes into a nonprofit, or I guess even a small business? Like what goes into a digital marketing budget? Like what do you need? What do you have to spend money on?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think the core buckets are, how are you going to manage these channels? So to make ease of time with batching and scheduling content, you need a scheduling management platform that also gives you analytics, ideally. So most of those things cost something, right? On either a monthly or annual basis. And then you have content creation, right? Are you doing that? Are you subscribing to something like Canva? That has a monthly or annual cost. Are you hiring a graphic designer? That person has a cost. Ads. Are you going to run ads? What is your ad budget? Who's going to run those ads, right? So there's personnel, and there's platform, and there's content creation. So you can say I want to do a Facebook Live. Of course, you can do that technically for free. But if you want to have a big production, there's amazing tools like Sling Studio that allow you to do multi-cam, automatic production with this Facebook Live. So then you're paying for this tool, right? So it ebbs and flows, but I would say like the main categories are your personnel, the platforms that you utilize, and then if you're going to have spend to be able to amplify.
And it seems like, just kind of winging it and like throwing some posts out on social media without a strategy and a budget behind it. Like, I can't imagine you're going to get, like, that's kind of pointless, right? Like you need some direction. You need some direction. I would imagine. So do you help organizations like create that strategy?
Yeah. So something that's a lot of the free resources and guides that I put out. And for the first time ever, I'm hosting an in-person retreat. It's going to be like a 2-day retreat in Atlanta, nonprofit content marketing strategy retreat. Literally the whole point of the weekend is it's 2 days long. The first day is all about auditing your organization, looking back at the previous year to look at your data and what works, just like what you're saying, right? You don't want to just be throwing spaghetti on the wall. You want to know strategically what social media content and metrics are going to align with your business goals, so that you're focusing and you're putting that spend in the right buckets, and focusing on the right platforms and tools. And then, so that's the whole first day, is auditing, goal setting, understanding where we've been to where we should be going. And then day 2 is literally going to be putting together the 2022 digital marketing plan. So what should your spend be every single month? What does that content look like? Should you be doing lives? Let's look at when are your tentpole events that you might have throughout the year, or giving cycles. What should we be doing during that time frame? So all of that, from like soup to nuts, will be drafted. But traditionally, the biggest thing that I focus on more so now is the social media advertising space. So how to keep an always on approach to be top of mind when it comes to either from a donor perspective, or I do this in my own business, right? And I'm obviously a for-profit business. So I want to say top of mind in my clients' eyes that I am a credible source for information regarding my niche of digital marketing. And so how can you use social media ads to do that?
Mm-hmm. I love that. And so oh my gosh, this event, I'm so excited for you. So
Thanks.
this is, I'm assuming this is like, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, this is one potential revenue stream for you. Have you done events before?
I've been to a bunch.
Yeah, but never
Yeah.
like run your own.
No, and so I'm bringing in a good friend of mine, Bree. She's coming in from Oklahoma. She's a brilliant branding strategist. And so we're going to be diving into branding first and foremost, because I think that's a big part of coming up with your content strategy. And honestly, the biggest thing that I've taken away from events is they need to be fun. They need
Mhm.
to be educational, but then also I feel like when you go to conferences, you're learning so much and you're taking so many notes and you're like, this is great. But then you're not being able to implement anything. And so then you leave and you get back into the hustle and bustle of real life, but you haven't actually concretely have anything. So
Mhm.
this specifically, we're leaving hours of time where it's working time. We've taught you everything you need to know. Now, Bree and I, and potentially some expert guests that are going to show up or virtually, are going to drop in and we're going to walk around and we're going to help you so that you're leaving with something tangible.
That's amazing. I feel like the typical conference, you're sitting in a hotel ballroom for 3 days and you have
Yeah.
sessions on this and sessions on that and sessions on this. You're learning snippets of different things along the way.
With
Like
a
you said, you have
thousand
this.
people.
Yeah, you have this notebook of notes. You get on the plane home, the notebook gets filed away, and you go back to work on Monday and you're like, okay, business as usual. So like, what was the point of that? Like
Yeah.
thousands of dollars, 5 days. Like, yeah, I love that. So they are going to walk away with their 2022 digital marketing plan, like in hand.
Yep. And a fully branding exercise. We're going to have Mallory Erickson, who I think you know, she's going to come in and talk about corporate partnerships and how to really align those, because that goes into part of what I love to do is work on what's co-branded content that you can do with partners and how you can work out sponsorship deals with that. So it's going to be really good. And then you have the fun stuff, right? Like we're going to do some networking. I'm going to plan some fun dinners at Pond City Market close by. So it's going to be a small group. I really want it to be 15 to 20 people max. So it's a very customized, very personal, with networking, and you get to learn from each other and learn from the experts in the room too.
Oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. And it's
Thanks.
also my dream. I was telling you before we started recording that, like, I'm dying to like host some sort of in-person something. I
I would be
love,
there.
oh, I love hosting. I love like planning travel. I love planning experiences. I love giving gifts. I'm like, that would be my dream.
Yeah, I'm
So
an Enneagram 7. So through and through, I'm like the
yes,
adventurer and I always like
yes.
planning a new thing. So
Yes. Does it feel so? I feel like as entrepreneurs, anytime we do something like a little bit different or that we haven't done before, it can feel a little bit scary, like a little bit outside your comfort zone. Are you feeling any of that as you're like leading up to this event? Or are you like the Enneagram sevens, like, no, this is going to be so fun and awesome?
well, I think what's interesting is this all came about honestly very random. So, and maybe other entrepreneurs can attest to this as being a solo entrepreneur that so I normally have a 6-month mastermind that I lead for nonprofit leaders. And that was supposed to start in January and go through June. And I was prepping that at the beginning or at the end of December and getting people enrolled and all the things. And then I ended up having a miscarriage and that shut down like December, like the beginning of January. And I just needed a break.
Mhm.
And so the mastermind did not fit anymore for what I thought would be doable for me
Mhm.
and manageable. And so I needed to recenter like myself and like what do I want to do? What feels good to me right now in terms of serving? And what I've loved like through going through this experience is community,
Mhm.
and the support of others like has been amazing. And so I just pivoted the 6-month mastermind into this 2-day retreat that felt good to be in person with people, to have that sense of community, to have something that you show up and you're learning and you're happy to be surrounded by these awesome people, and you leave with something that you're confident and you feel empowered to execute. Like that felt good. And it's also within a window where you show up, we do it, and you leave and you go.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I needed that right now. And so that's how, I mean, I think you have to listen to yourself as an entrepreneur. I think, especially if you're working in a more of a solo capacity, is what we might have all these dreams, but it's like, what feels good to me right now? And give yourself the grace to be able to pivot when you need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm so sorry for your loss. I can imagine how difficult that must have been. But what a beautiful thing that you were able to listen to yourself and really know what you needed. And what you needed was not a 6-month commitment to a mastermind, and maybe not showing up as your best because you had other stuff going on that you were, that you were dealing with. And so being able to pivot that. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, having that ability and power to do that is like, it's one of the best things about it. I feel like, you don't have to show up at work on Monday morning at 9 o'clock and and do something. You can shift and change. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah. It was like
amazing.
that when it all happened, I just stopped answering anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, and I could do that and I could choose to do that. So yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, that's super exciting about the event. So we'll definitely, you can send us all the links and we'll put them in the show notes so people can check that out. So do you find that a lot of the strategies that you're using for nonprofits, are you using those same kind of strategies in your own business as an entrepreneur?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, so many things are repurposed for different industries. So a great example is I teach this idea of the ideal donor avatar exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You do the exact same thing as an entrepreneur with an ideal customer avatar exercise.
Mm-hmm.
The questions are all very similar. The only thing that I add for nonprofits is a section on giving habits. So understanding how does your ideal donor give? Are they a recurring donor? Do they give to multiple organizations? What would make them leave? You essentially could ask the same thing of client. Mm-hmm. How many times are they going to purchase your product? It's just switching the narrative mm-hmm. on the communication. Another example is funnels, right? We call them more funnels in the entrepreneurship world. I call it a donor's journey in the nonprofit space. Mm-hmm. So 100%, I think the biggest thing that I tell nonprofits all day is you're a business. You might not be selling a service or a physical product, but your sales, quote unquote, is donations. So how are we creating different products? I think recurring giving products, and really having a brand around that, and you have a website around that, and communication and marketing materials. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just different terminology that you use that reflects better and is more understood in the nonprofit sector. But yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I feel like, oh my gosh, this is just so needed. I feel like there's so much out there for business owners about building funnels and talking to your ideal client, but it's just that it just doesn't, you just don't see that as much in the, in the nonprofit space. And I feel like this is you're really a disruptor. I feel like, do you feel that way? Do you consider yourself a disruptor?
That's what I hope to be.
Awesome.
I think I do digital audits for clients that are very comprehensive, that look at your whole digital ecosystem essentially. And I did one before the holiday, and I was just looking into their Google Analytics, mobile versus desktop website views. And business owners, we can do the same thing, and we should. Looking at where's your traffic coming from, and mobile, desktop, how many visitors do you have coming in, and how many sales are happening on either mobile or desktop. This organization had double the amount of website traffic, but only 19%, I think, of their revenue was coming in on mobile. So they were missing this huge opportunity. And then we were able to look and be like, oh, your like UI, UX, your user experience on your website on mobile is restricting people from easily being able to access your donation. It's like way down, like 4 or 5 clicks before you even get to it. And they were like mind blown that this one simple step could earn them 6 figures in potential donor revenue. Yeah. So
wow.
I love being able to dive in and take the things that I've learned from like the business space and apply them to the nonprofit industry and ask the harder questions. So yeah, I love the fact of being considered a director. I would consider that a compliment.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, it was intended to be. Do you ever, so you're like in the social media space all day, every day, for your own business, working with nonprofits. Do you ever get burned out on social media?
So what's interesting about that is I did this own audit for myself this past year, and I realized what platforms made the most sense for my business. So from a social media standpoint, I have 2 primary channels that have completely had a 180 switch from last year. So I focus on LinkedIn and YouTube is where like my primary audience is. And I focus a lot on YouTube because it's owned by our best friend, Google. So from a search optimization standpoint, if I want to be known as a thought leader and raise brand awareness for myself as a digital marketer for nonprofits, that's a game changer place for me to be. And I want to be a thought leader. So for LinkedIn makes sense for me. So Instagram is my problem platform. Like if I go on there, I get lost in the scroll. So I don't actually have like an Instagram strategy for myself. I have a very thoughtful YouTube and blog strategy for myself this year and LinkedIn. So I think it's doing an analysis of your own personal business and understanding where do I actually need to be that makes the difference. And then going back to Google Analytics, I realized the people that came from YouTube stayed on my website for like 8 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Versus somebody who came from Instagram was like a minute and a half.
Wow.
So yeah, I had way more qualified leads coming from YouTube that I was like, this is where I should be investing my time and LinkedIn versus something that I also get lost in. So like, I would say I have definitely been lost in the world of social, but now it's just taking a much more strategic approach to what makes sense.
That is super powerful. I love the YouTube strategy because like you said, the connection to Google and how YouTube is like a search engine in itself or something. Versus, just like playing around on Instagram. So that's very interesting that
and you also have on YouTube. Sorry, I was just going to say on YouTube, somebody, like you just said, it's a search platform. So somebody has the intent and the desire already to find something that you're an expert in. Right. Because you're searching versus Instagram, you're just kind of scrolling and you'll see like what comes up. You're not typically, sometimes you're searching by hashtag, but most of the time, if you're just scrolling, you're kind of like there for entertainment purposes.
Yeah. That's so interesting. It's also kind of calling me out a little bit, which was not your intention. I know, but I'm like, yeah, I maybe spend too much time around on Instagram and maybe should do this like slightly more strategically. I have started using LinkedIn a little bit more consistently because I think we definitely have people there, but I've never done like a full, well, I shouldn't say never. I've looked at before, like where all of our clients have come from. And it's like 95% referrals and like basically 0% Instagram. So I'm like, why am I spending so much time like writing captions on Instagram?
Same. Yeah. What you can do, and this is what I'm doing, is I am going to invest in ads. So that content will be on Facebook and Instagram. So I don't have to organically post as much. So right now, for example, and you can copy this. So I have 5 pieces of content that are running for $1 a day. So it's $5 a day total on Facebook and Instagram. And the 5 pieces of content are different like articles that show I'm credible. I was on the We Are for Good podcast, which I know you're friends of John and Becky. So I put like my link to my podcast episode with them. So I have 5 different pieces of content, and I am targeting my warm audience. So people who have visited my website, who have engaged with me on Facebook and Instagram before, and who are part of my email list. So they are, and it's a reach campaign. So the only point of it is for me to pop up continuously in their feed with these different 5 pieces of content. So I am not posting daily on Facebook or Instagram, but to the people that I care about, they're still seeing me. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I imagine you picked out 5 of like your best or / most relevant pieces of content. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
So rotate that.
Yeah. So for $5 a day, you are not having to show up, but you're still showing up and people are seeing your face.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And showing up and seeing the content that I want them to see. Right.
Right. Exactly. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. What are you doing on LinkedIn? And are you finding that, are nonprofits using LinkedIn for the same, in the same ways that they're using Facebook and Instagram?
So on LinkedIn, so I'll talk about it twofold. One, as an entrepreneur, I focus on LinkedIn. It's almost in sharing a little bit of personal and professional mixed together. Text only works the best for LinkedIn. So there was like one post I shared, and it's also understanding who your audience is. There's one post I shared about my dad was going to donate to a nonprofit, and he was all excited because they had a really low percentage in like operations. Mm-hmm. And I was immediately like, or like, you know how you spend like how many cents on the dollar for operations statistic. Yep. And I was like, why is that stat important to you, Dad? Yeah. And he was like, well, da, 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 da. And I was like, do you wonder how much it costs for your coffee mug to be created? And he's like, no. And I was like, then why do you? And I just kind of like started to ask them these questions. And I was like, nonprofit employees should be paid wages, that living wages, because you need great people in order to execute these really important missions. And if they're not paid well, then they're going to leave. Then you have a low retention rate. So I shared this post on LinkedIn of our conversation, and it blew up.
Really?
Yeah. It garnered so much conversation. It like 50,000 views for a LinkedIn post. Yeah. Like 900 and something. Yeah. It got a ton of traffic. So personally, I find a lot of success in personal antidote / teaching things / something that your audience can really engage upon. And then from a nonprofit side, I think there's so many benefits to LinkedIn. I mean, it depends upon, again, your business goals of what you're trying to achieve. I think something that nonprofits are missing right now, and I'm actually working with Mallory on something around this, is there's $4 to $7 billion in employee matching funds that go unused every year.
Wow.
Every year. And LinkedIn is the best place where people mark where they work. Mm-hmm. So if we can figure out a way to run really strategic ad campaigns, highlighting the fact, knowing who are the companies that have matching programs, mm-hmm. and reach those employees, matching them with a mission that's going to align with the values of the business that they work for. I think there's some magic there. Mm-hmm. LinkedIn can be used a lot of times for just like the direct messages for potential new board members. Also reaching out for brand partnerships. So that's a big one. So if you want to work, I don't know, I'm just making this up. If you want to find the director of marketing at Target, right? LinkedIn's going to be the place to go to try and start that conversation. So there's a lot of different use cases depending upon what you're looking to achieve.
That's so interesting because I would not have even, I mean, clearly I'm not in marketing or development, so I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was just like, do nonprofits find like donors on LinkedIn? And it sounds like that's not the primary use case, but you just listed several that are yeah, that would be amazing for LinkedIn. So I love that. And I think like it sounds like overall social media strategy is not about, I think we all know this to a degree, right? But it's not about being on every single platform. It's about figuring out what your goals are and then figuring out what platforms are most effective for you. And then like finding that magic place between the two. And I love that you're like, okay, I'm on YouTube and LinkedIn, and that's where my focus is. You're not like, and Facebook and Instagram and
Right.
Pinterest and all the things.
Right. 100%. Yeah. You have to find out what works for you and your business.
Yeah, it's so easy to get distracted. I feel like there was a hot second that I was like, I think I need to be on Pinterest. Then I'm like toiling over Canva, creating stupid like things on Pinterest. I'm like, what am I doing? This is not for me.
Well, and I
Not
did
for
that
me
too.
right now.
And what's interesting is I got a ton of website traffic from doing that with Pinterest, with blogs, but it was horrible. The bounce rate was like 87%. And it was like, okay, yes, the website traffic views were there, but they're not quality leads. So that's the other thing you have to look at is get past just like the vanity metrics of something.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're not your people, then there's no point in wasting your time and money with it. Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
That's so smart. I think I need to like rein in my Instagram usage. I really do. Oh my goodness.
I mean, I see you. Gosh, I mean, Stephanie's going to be my CFO, everyone. So
Woo.
I think there's so many things that, oh man, finance, I think is such an interesting concept because we all desperately need it. And so you becoming a thought leader, I could totally see you doing, it depends. I mean, audio is definitely your jam. So this podcast being a great source, right, of information, and then turning that into blog content, like I could see, and then honing in on in the blogs, like what audience you're trying to serve based upon what you include in that blog content could be awesome. And then you kind of, I could see LinkedIn working really well too.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. It's more just like, oh my gosh, the time and the people. Do you ever find like, have you worked with any type of organization that you feel like social media, like or digital marketing, like doesn't really work for them?
Doesn't work for them.
Or it's like hard. Like I know you said like your audience is there. You just have to like figure out where they are and how to talk to them and how to, target them. But have you ever found any like it just doesn't work?
No, I don't think so. I also encompass digital marketing, also including your website.
Mm.
So, I mean, I think everyone needs a website. No, I think if you're very specific about your messaging and your content and how it applies value to the person you're looking to work with, I think it can work. I'm just like trying to rack my brain, but no, I think in any different world, all of the platforms are also so different. Mm-hmm. Like if you put on your user hat for a second, like where you go for different things, it's thinking about that as your client, like where are they going and how am I showing up there to be of benefit to them? And I think that can be any business, whether you're a pizza restaurant to a boutique to a small business owner providing financial services, right? Or me working in the nonprofit space. Like every business is so different. But if we really like niche down and are providing valuable content, then I think it's just finding your place, like we talked about on the different channels. And no, I think it can work for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Well, as we are wrapping up, I always like to ask, a couple questions that are kind of selfish because I want to know the answer for myself. So our last two questions. So my first one is, what helps you disconnect from work?
Oh, my dog. For sure. Oh my gosh, best decision ever. He's a Labradoodle. He's a mini Labradoodle. He's the best. And we got him at the very beginning of COVID because COVID hit that weekend when everything kind of hit the fan, was my birthday weekend. And we were supposed to get married 2 weeks from then in Mexico.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that didn't happen. So I was like, I need an emotional support animal.
We're getting a dog. If we can't go to Mexico and get married, we're getting a dog. Love it.
So he's amazing because he'll just like sit in my office and then he'll just like tuck his head and sit it on my leg and he'll just like look at me and be like, Mom, it's time to go outside.
Yeah.
So
you like actually physically have to disconnect from work.
Physically have to leave. And I do my best to leave my phone at the house and go walk with him without a cell phone.
Yeah.
So that is for sure my top piece of advice. Get an animal.
I love it. I know I have an animal. I have a 13-year-old doggy, but he's, he's getting kind of old, but I do have kids and they kind of count the same thing. So it's like, go be with them, put the phone in another room. That's a great point about like not taking your phone with you on a walk. I need to like physically disconnect from my phone more often.
Yeah. Don't need any of those push notifications.
No, I have no notifications anymore except text messages. And that is it. Yeah. I hear you. My second question is, I don't know if you're a big reader, but if you are a reader, do you have like a good book recommendation for a book that you've read recently? Could be fiction or nonfiction.
Yeah, so many. So I know we are on video, so you can see there's like books behind me. Yep. So I alternate between a nonfiction business book and a fiction business book.
Me too. That's what I do too. Me too.
So if I turn around, I'm going to go with an oldie, but a goodie.
Okay.
So Good is the New Cool. It's bright orange.
I don't know this one.
It's amazing. This book made me quit my job 5 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, Bobby and Afdel are amazing. They're the authors, co-authors. And I ended up reading this book, saw him speak in New York City when I still lived there, quit my job, sent him a tweet that I quit my job because of his book. And he's like, excuse me, who are you? And then we both serendipitously moved to LA in the same week. And he invited me to his book launch party. And we've been friends ever since.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. Look at that. The power of social media, the power of a tweet.
That's right. That's right.
I love it. Okay. I'm adding this to my want to read list on Goodreads.
Good. This is the inspiration and like format for the one day that I write a book, how I would write a book. He interviews a ton of amazing people in the purpose industry, brands doing good. Mm-hmm. And then from all of his interviews creates like this process to then implement, which I think is so smart. And that's what he teaches on today.
Oh my gosh. So cool. It's on my list now. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Well, okay. So where can our listeners find you? On YouTube and LinkedIn, right?
Yeah. That's right. On YouTube and LinkedIn. So, I mean, everything Positive Equation or Dana Snyder is where they can find me.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, Dana, thank you so much for joining me. I was able to join you on one of your YouTube like live streams a few weeks ago, and now we get to connect here. So it's great to get to know you more. And yeah, we'll put all of your links in the show notes. And if you are a nonprofit and want some like in-depth digital marketing support in Atlanta next month, what are the dates for your retreat again?
It is February 26th and 27th. It's the Friday and Saturday before the P2P, the peer-to-peer conference in Atlanta. So time's up really well.
Perfect. Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Well, we will definitely link all of that stuff. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was great to chat with you.
You too. Thanks, Stephanie.